At St. Rose of Lima Church in Newtown, Connecticut, a vigil so crowded that hundreds of mourners stand outside in the cold, offering hugs to ease the unbearable pain, lighting candles for each of the victims, and singing songs and holding prayer to find some kind of peace. My brother, in perfect harmony. The deacon here tells us 7 of the 20 students, the littlest victims, went to church here.
It's just terrible. The tragedy. Those angels. I can't imagine being those parents. It's just horrible.
A heartbroken community turning out to honor, remember, and try to understand.
It's a nightmare. I'm thinking I'm dreaming. I think it's a dream. And I think about those parents. It breaks my heart. What a Christmas. It's gonna be awful, awful.
Inside the Mass, some cling to rosaries and search for a way past the horror of today.
We will somehow manage this horrible, horrible event, but we need to do this together.
People's children, brothers and sisters were taken from them. People's spouses, those teachers and administrators were taken from us.
Monsignor Robert Weiss spent much of his day with the families of the victims.
Think about one little girl who's going to be an angel in our Christmas pageant next Tuesday. Another little girl who's already chosen her first communion dress. She was so excited. What do you say to those parents? What do you say? You look at them, you hug them, you cry with them, you pray with them.
So many here wondering how their little town finds their way past all of this.
And you wonder how you can go back to life as normal.
And those candles tonight, those are still lit, those candles there for each one of those victims. This church, its doors are remaining open all night. And late tonight, we did speak with a deacon who said, you know, at this point, people are rallying around each other in this town, and at some point...
It doesn't get any easier. Days go by, and still, it's tough. In this grieving Newtown community, it's dreary. It's slow moving, but the emotion still runs rampant.
You have to be human to feel the pain of this community, just the parents, the mothers, the fathers who lost their loved ones.
It's just so devastating. I mean, 20 children, babies.
They were babies. They were innocent. They were just going to school, but never made it home to tell their parents about their day.
We all support them, and we're here for them, even though we're not from the town.
Many of those we encountered Monday drove distances to pay their respects, though some not removed from tragedy.
I have a son who was a victim in Aurora, and we live right nearby, and this is very close to home.
A small town, quaint, seldom, if at all, heard of prior to that fateful day, the day 27 lives were taken. Families whose lives are forever changed.
They would come in all the time and she would be with them. Her name was Caroline Previty.
And Emily Parker.
On my way to WestCon every morning, she used to wave.
Now teddy bears and angels and wreaths to remember them, the flame that once burned so bright in their lives.
When a tragedy like this happens here, it really happens everywhere.
But now the town, new to most, gains hope, love, and support from us all.
They're in a better place and they'll always be looking over this town now.
Skip Schloming owns several rental properties around Cambridge's Inman Square. The rentals are Schloming's livelihood, but he's worried it could all be taken away from him if the medical marijuana ballot question is approved by Massachusetts voters. The reason: federal law says marijuana, even for medical purposes, is illegal.
The critical danger for property owners that would have taken in a tenant who wants to grow marijuana in their apartment, or their caregiver to also grow it in their apartment, is that the property would be tainted with this illegal drug activity.
And so the federal government would then have the right to seize property, even if the feds only suspect someone may be growing marijuana. And it doesn't only apply to rental properties. Any homeowners growing medical marijuana could lose their homes.
And they can literally take your property, keep it, sell it, and keep the results.
And you're left with nothing.
And we're left with nothing.
And Boston attorney Len Milligan says it's already happening in other states that have already passed medical marijuana laws.
And that the federal government has actually been pursuing these forfeiture actions in California, and they've been doing it admittedly because it's a cheaper and easier way to enforce the federal drug law than to prosecute people criminally.
But there's another problem. While federal law prohibits marijuana, state law prohibits landlords from denying housing because of discrimination.
That can mean sick people. That can mean people that have infirmities or disabilities.
So is there any way that landlords could legitimately ask someone if they're using medical marijuana? That's illegal, right?
It is.
So the conflict between state and federal law is creating one big catch-22 for landlords. Skip Schloming and other members of the Small Property Owners Association he runs hope if Question 3 passes, lawmakers on Beacon Hill will address the problem legislatively. One proposal, an amendment giving landlords the right to choose whether they want to rent to someone growing the plant and allow landlords to ask tenants about it. But some disability advocates worry that could open the door for landlords to start asking other personal questions.
I do fear that landlords will use this opportunity, as any scrupulous business person would, to expand the scope of their inquiry to find out all kinds of things that they would be able to make a business argument for why we can't have this person there.
Another solution, amend the referendum to only allow medical marijuana to be grown in industrial and business settings, not in homes. Schloming and many other landlords are hoping for the latter.
We'll deal with it when it comes, if it comes, and we're expecting the legislature will make a change.
And I'm Elizabeth Hopkins live in Scituate this morning, where just a few moments ago, all of this debris came over the side of the seawall here, and some of these pieces, quite frankly, are very large. You can see a few very large stones. As a matter of fact, Bobby, let's move out of the way a little bit here, because I don't want all of a sudden for you to be hit by this. But just when we started this morning, we could have gone all the way down to there, and now the water is so intense and moving up so quickly that you can see the spray behind me at the seawall, and the water has also moved up to the rack line, which is the highest point that it typically comes to, and yet we still are not at the height of this storm.
Back here again, and they're still putting water on this fire. It's a pretty large building. Again, there are 16 units in it. And the most important thing is that everyone made it out safely. We have yet to be able to touch base solidly with fire.
This double shooting claimed the life of a teenage girl. Tonight, another teenager is in critical condition. Investigators tell us the two were sitting on their front porch, and witnesses tell me the deceased was pregnant.
And now you're taking a look at the charred ground over by the riverbed. Firefighters saying things could have been a lot worse here today, given the time of the afternoon, again around 3 p.m. when this happened, and the popularity.
I'll take a step out here. You can see that the cleanup effort here is continuing at Dewey Square. It will be continuing for many hours with city sanitation workers, but this all began around 4.
Jackie, it took a long time to get this fire under control. Check it out here on Chestnut Hill Avenue. In fact, there are still pockets burning inside the building at this hour. They are now waiting for a crane to arrive to knock it down so the gas to the building can be shut off. The blaze broke out shortly after 6 o'clock this morning in a pizza shop, spreading quickly to 3 other businesses and this one-story commercial building along Chestnut Hill Avenue.
It's horrible, but it's good that there's a fire station directly across the street, I guess.
The fire generated large plumes of smoke. It moved quickly to 4 alarms as more than 100 firefighters battled the wind-driven inferno. Authorities say much of the smoke was caused by chemicals burning in a janitorial supply company. The other storefronts housed a laundromat and catering company. There was a large explosion when firefighters first arrived at the building.
We're not sure if it was a gas fuel-fed fire. That remains to be seen, but every time we tried to make headway on it, it seemed to flare up again, so that was a problem.
Frigid temperatures created less than ideal conditions. Firefighters were pulled out of the building at one point because of fears it might collapse.
The fire was up in the roof and the ceiling, and it literally just rolled from right to left.
Water filled up nearby parking lots. Sand was dumped in front of this housing complex behind the building to keep the water from getting inside. By early afternoon, the blaze was under control, and when the smoke cleared, ice could be seen covering everything.
We're just concerned about the flooding from that, but nothing more we can do. It's what it is.
We are back live along Chestnut Hill Avenue now. They have been out here for almost 6 hours working this fire.
2-year-old Brianna Dollar of Niskayuna, New York, loves the water. That's why her mom is letting her go in the ocean in Rye, New Hampshire, despite a recent shark sighting here.
Honest to God, if there was a shark out there, she would be swimming after that shark.
On Monday, a beachgoer spotted the shark at Wallace Sands Beach and alerted lifeguards. One of the lifeguards also saw the shark, but so far there's no word on what kind it was. One of the harmless types or the potentially deadly great white shark, which has been frequently seen close to the Cape Cod shore the past few summers. Dana Richardson is the paddle boater in this picture that was snapped on Nauset Beach in Orleans, Mass. On Saturday. He was the one who alerted the kayaker to the shark just feet behind him.
He looks over at me and I point my paddle behind him, and that's when the picture was taken. He looks behind him and kind of goes white, you know, and then just takes off paddling towards shore.
Experts say it's possible a great white could be off the New Hampshire coast, but not probable.
At this time of year in New Hampshire, by far the most common shark is a species called the blue shark, and that's an animal that's typically 6 to 8 feet long, around a couple 200 to 300 pounds, and is exclusively a fish eater.
These novice surfers from Montreal hadn't heard about the shark sighting before coming to the beach, but they didn't let it stop them from going in the water.
Well, my biggest fear was the sharks, and everyone told me there wasn't.
Well, I assume that there's always going to be sharks, so I'm not really bothered by it. It's just an interesting fact to know as I'm entering the water.
Those ladies aren't the only ones going in. As you can see, quite a few people have ventured into the water, but we've been noticing they aren't going out very far from shore. And they also tell us, the folks who have gone in, that they are keeping an eye out.
It had been repeatedly delayed by engineering issues for nearly 4 years, so when the 787 Dreamliner made its first landing in Boston Sunday morning, it was a dream come true for Logan Airport.
This size aircraft and the efficiencies it up, it just puts us in a whole different arena now.
Japan Airlines will fly the Dreamliner Boston to Tokyo starting next month, and with its unique combination of size, range, and fuel efficiency, Massport's Ed Frenny says this 250-seater could open up all kinds of international destinations for nonstop service from Boston for the first time ever.
Shanghai, Beijing, Singapore, those are likely destinations in the next few years once this 787, gets into the fleets of the other airlines.
Built substantially from carbon fiber, not metal, it's 20% more fuel efficient than today's fleet, and cutting edge. From fighter jet heads-up displays for pilots in the cockpit, all the way back to dozens of hues of inside lighting. Now, for those who aren't aviation nuts, what may be most noticeable about the 787 is how much more comfortable it is in all sorts of ways. Like these windows that are much bigger than normal, they electronically darken and lighten rather than just having a shade. And then check this out. It's an overhead luggage bin that can fit more than 4 rollaways in it. And then take a look at this. I'm 6'2". For the first time in my life, I'm comfortable standing up inside an airplane.
The things you can't see but you really feel are higher humidification, lower cabin altitude pressure, cleaner air, and those are things that just make you feel better. You get off and you feel great.
April 22 is the first day of service from Logan to Narita Airport in Tokyo, initially 4 days a week, growing to 7 days a week in June.